Black woman. I know in some of our earlier conversations you mentioned that the black women you've met have been uptight. What do you mean by that?
What do I mean by uptight? Going toward a more militant attitude about their own identity. Unfeminine aspect of the black militant woman.
Do you know what Jim means by the uptightness of black women?
Oh, yes.
You've been in the theater.
Well, I've felt it. I've sensed it with almost every black woman that we know.
James Earl Jones is arguably one of the finest black actors to have graced both the golden and silver screens since the 1960s, having acted in several blockbuster movies and stage productions throughout his lifetime. The Coming to America star has seen it all, heard it all, and conquered it all, displaying his versatility by taking on challenging roles. Interestingly, people like Denzel Washington, Samuel L. Jackson, and Morgan Freeman seem to have more respect and esteem than the Lion King star, though they have fewer movies and accolades. Despite belonging in the esteemed class of actors who have won all there is to win in the world of movies and stage theater, he was not fully accepted by both his community and Hollywood in general. But why was the esteemed actor so hated? Why wasn't he as popular as his fellow black actors with fewer achievements than him? Let's get into it. James Earl Jones has been named one of the greatest actors in American history, and his works speak for themselves. However, he held some controversial views that saw him lose screen time a few times in his career. From the very beginning of his career, James Earl Jones created a love-hate relationship with the Afro community when he made some personal comments which didn't go down well with his community.
I'm not necessarily bonded to being black. I don't have to act out being black.
The seasoned actor's view on black women being unfeminine and militant triggered women from his community who claimed that they had ended up in that situation due to the fact that they needed to survive in their environment. James had also claimed that black women were uptight and always had pent-up feelings that exposed them to quick and hot tempers. He continued that black women were overreacting against the old stereotypical woman who was submissive and all-giving to the white man. James also expressed his feeling that the black woman was overreacting against the myth of the matriarch, the breadwinner of the family, because he believed it wasn't a choice for women to be breadwinners. He claimed that when black women saw that a certain job came with a high political and social status, they rushed for it, and thus they gradually took on the role of the breadwinner, and with it, its attendant frustrations and problems. Black women did not agree with his views due to the fact that they needed to take care of their families, with most households lacking male figures who could take that burden from them. To make matters messier, James claimed he preferred white women to black women because they were kinda rough and behaved almost like men. This take caused a great controversy in the black community, especially the women folk, and they condemned him for it. They criticized him and called for the boycott of all his work. The fact that he even let his Caucasian girlfriend at the time also have a say in matters of his community displeased many in general.
Almost every black woman that we know, whether they accept me or not, whether there's always a tolerance, but there's always hostility.
James has also had a tendency where he never fully accepted himself as part of his community due to the fact that he was mixed, and the public hinted that he might not be fully comfortable with the fact that he is actually a black man. Jones, who has Irish, Native American, and African in his makeup, turns questions of ethnicity on their head. When you wake up in the morning before you look in the mirror, do you see an ethnicity? I don't, and if I did, I'd be in trouble, because that has blinded me to who I might really be. Even waking up seeing myself as a male blinds me to who I might really be.
In my family background, we have 3 different races, ethnics, and so I have no call to be bigoted about anybody.
Another incident that clouded James' career was during the 60s when he accidentally insinuated that his fellow and equally famous actor Anthony Quinn was racist. It was deemed an unforgivable sin to accuse the much-loved Quinn of racism. At the time, Quinn, who was white and born to an Irish-Mexican father, had declared his desire to portray the only emperor of the Kingdom of Haiti, Henri Christophe. The main problem with Anthony Quinn wanting to portray Henri the Emperor was the fact that Henri Christophe was the first and only black emperor to rule the Kingdom of Haiti before it fell, while Anthony himself was a white man. The public, with the black community at the forefront, believed a black man should portray the emperor who was also black, but Tony Quinn didn't think an actor should be restricted to playing roles based on skin color. He thought that an actor should be versatile enough to fit into any role that he desired or the directors chose for him. The public and even some Hollywood stars felt it was inappropriate for him to put on black makeup and adopt black mannerism just so he could satisfy his acting desires, while actual black stars were being restricted to menial roles like maids, housekeepers, gardeners, and attendants. A demonstration was held to vehemently oppose Tony Quinn and to support black people into getting black roles, to at least create jobs and opportunities for them instead of the low-pay roles they were always subjected to. One black actress, Ellen Holly, penned an angry letter in the New York Times asking Tony Quinn to halt his vain ambition, explaining that it would take away black pride. She hoped Quinn would give up his mission and allow blacks to represent their history. It was during his appearance on the Dick Cavett Show in 1972 that James Earl Jones was asked about his thoughts on Quinn's ambitions and Holly's remarks, and although he tried to carefully tread the issue, he still managed to get on some people's negative side.
I can't condemn Tony Quinn for playing that. Only Tony Quinn can condemn himself if he does not achieve several things.
According to him, he had no problem with Quinn portraying Henry Christoph if he fulfilled 3 requirements: projecting the appearance of a black man, achieving Haitian mannerisms, accents, and finally accurately portraying the emperor. In his estimation, if Quinn fails at achieving even one of these things, then he would have condemned himself. Dick Cavett, the host, claimed James wasn't willing to openly condemn Quinn, given that it was virtually impossible to fulfill all those requirements. However, the Star Wars actor explained that he didn't know Quinn too well to make any judgment on his talent. James mentioned that he disagreed with Quinn because the latter had claimed that the reason he wanted to play the black role was that no black actor felt competent enough to take on the character, a statement that James deemed false. According to him, many black actors, including he himself, had the range and the skill to take on Christoph's character. However, they refused to audition because they had not seen a single script that did justice to Christoph's legacy historically, culturally, and dramatically. James felt that Quinn only gave that excuse to make himself comfortable, given the huge controversy that his ambition created in the press. He then made a joke claiming that he also had aspirations of playing Ludwig van Beethoven, but he had to learn to curl his hair, paint his skin white, and adopt his mannerisms. Though he appeared gracious during the interview, many fans, especially the whites, understood the subtle dig aimed at Tony Quinn and rather called him a racist. Allegedly, Hollywood took offense at Jones's slight on their favorite actor Tony Quinn and decided to silently blackball him. From then on, he had fewer roles to star in and received low remuneration as a result. To make matters worse, talk show hosts decided against interviewing him, all because he had implied that their favorite actor was racist. He was hardly seen on the news or granting interviews as the move to silence him continued. Even white fans didn't want to see him on other TV screens and thus wouldn't patronize the films he starred in. Despite having faced numerous challenges in his career, James never quit, and he held on to his love for acting as he was born for the stage. Born in 1931, Jones spent his first 5 years in rural Mississippi, living with his maternal grandparents while his mother looked for work. His father, Robert Earl Jones, had left before he was born. The household he was being raised in was big, with about 13 people, and for a while it was thought that Jones might live with his paternal grandmother in Memphis to ease the burden. But when he was driven to her house, he clung to the car. It was the only way I could express that I wanted to be with them. They accepted that. Soon after, Jones moved with his family to Michigan, but the turmoil was so traumatic that he developed a stutter that lasted into his teens. It was his struggle to overcome the stutter that led Jones into acting in the early 1950s, and it made him appreciate the value of the spoken word. Jones then moved to New York to study drama and lived with his father for a time. Not, he says, to reclaim him as a parent, but because he was trying to save on rent. It was too late to get to know him as a father. If you don't learn that from the beginning, there's no way to catch up. It took us some time to accept that if we could be friends, that would be best. He told me, "I can't make a living doing this, so if you want to enter this world, do it because you love it." That was good advice. After a few years, James Jones considered giving up acting, but two things encouraged him. The first was his father's response to one of his performances in Of Mice and Men. His father told him he could act. He never told him he was great or he had potential. He only told him that he could act, and this fueled James to continue with his passion. The second was winning the lead role in The Great White Hope in 1968, where he realized he could raise a family on that kind of work. That was the key thing. Anyone can bum through as a bachelor, but to raise a family, you've got to make sure you can draw a paycheck. In the 1960s, casting black actors in Shakespeare was radical, yet some of Jones's earliest performances were in the New York Shakespeare Festival. The play that got Jones noticed in 1961 was Jean Genet's piece The Blacks, in which black actors perform in whiteface to subvert colonial racism. That led to a number of roles exploring African American life, from The Great White Hope, inspired by black boxer Jack Johnson, to a play about Paul Robeson in 1977, and more recently, his portrayal in 2006 of Thurgood Marshall, the first black justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Although James has been integral to the development of black theater in America, he is resistant to such categorization, claiming there haven't been enough profound things written about what being black means and what a black character is. According to him, nobody really knows what being black entails. He has great respect for August Wilson and his examinations of African American 20th century experience, but feels troubled that, to cook up his creativity, August piled blackness around himself. He's half white, and I never understood why he had to dismiss that aspect of himself. Jones is an accomplished stage actor, having won the Tony Awards in 1969 for The Great White Hope and in 1987 for Fences. He has acted in many Shakespearean roles: Othello, King Lear, Oberon in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Abhorsen in Measure for Measure, and Claudius in Hamlet. He also played Lenny on Broadway in the 1974 Brooks Atkinson Theater production of the adaptation of Steinbeck's novella Of Mice and Men, with Kevin Conway as George and Pamela Blair as Curly's wife. He even received Kennedy Center honors in 2002. In November 2009, James reprised the role of Big Daddy in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof at the Novello Theatre in London's West End. This production also stars Sanaa Lathan as Maggie, Felicia Rashad as Big Mama, and Adrian Lester as Brick. The next year, James Jones returned to the Broadway stage in Alfred Urry's Driving Miss Daisy, along with Vanessa Redgrave at the Golden Theatre. In November 2011, Jones starred in Driving Miss Daisy in London's West End, and on November 12th received his honorary Oscar in front of the audience at the Wyndham's Theatre, which was presented to him by Ben Kingsley. James Jones also played the role of President Art Hochstadter in Gore Vidal's The Best Man on Broadway at the Schoenfeld Theatre, earning Jones a Tony nomination for Best Performance in a Lead Role in a Play. He also became famous for requesting his name to be hidden from the credits of a film in which he starred in. In his voice acting debut, Jones decided not to attach his name to the project until the final film of the Star Wars trilogy, Return of the Jedi. The reason for Jones's decision was out of respect for the man beneath the mask, David Prowse. The British actor performed all of Darth Vader's lines underneath the iconic costume, despite expressing concerns that his voice would be too muffled. Prowse was told not to worry by director George Lucas, who reassured him that the dialogue would be re-recorded in post-production. Little did he know that his voice was not going to be used, but instead, Lucas hired Jones to be the menacing and breathy sound of the famous villain. This is because Prowse's thick Devonshire accent didn't quite have the same terrifying effect as the one belonging to Jones. The crew went as far as to nickname Prowse the Darth Farmer. Lucas expressed some hesitation over casting Jones, as he didn't want to have the only black actor involved with Star Wars be portrayed as a villain. Yet after searching far and wide by listening to countless tapes of different voices, including that of Orson Welles, no one could compete with Jones's profound baritone voice. Recording all of his lines in just 2.5 hours, James took home $7,500, claiming that he viewed his role as nothing more than special effects, stating that Prowse is Vader. According to one of Lucas's drafts, Darth Vader speaks in an oddly filtered voice through his complex breathing mask. Jones achieves this perfectly well. However, sound designer Ben Burt helped to create the breathing sound by using a scuba tank regulator that he himself would breathe into before editing it into the rhythm of Jones's speech. Vader's voice is easily the most recognizable in Hollywood history. Thus, it is no surprise that by the time Return of the Jedi was released, everyone had already discovered that it belonged to James Earl Jones. Therefore, he decided to have his name credited alongside Prowse. Subsequent re-releases of the first two films also retroactively credited Jones for his mighty vocal performance. While James Earl Jones is the voice behind legendary Star Wars villain Darth Vader, it seems the 91-year-old finally hung up his helmet. In an interview with Vanity Fair, Star Wars sound supervising editor Matthew Wood said Jones was looking into winding down this character. Jones's voice was remastered from the original Star Wars films for recent Disney Plus series Obi-Wan Kenobi, and some of Jones's archival voice recordings were also used. For future Star Wars projects, Jones has reportedly granted permission for Disney and Lucasfilm to use artificial intelligence and archival recordings to recreate his voice. The actor is credited for his advice on the performance of Darth Vader on Obi-Wan Kenobi, with Wood describing him as a benevolent godfather. Jones's family told Wood how pleased they were with the finished product by Ukrainian-based voice cloning company Respeecher. He voiced Darth Vader in the original Star Wars film, which came out in 1977, and follow-ups The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He has since reprised the role in films such as the first installment of the Star Wars anthology series, Rogue One, and the third installment of the sequel trilogy, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. A different actor has always donned the costume and provided the movement for the famous villain, including the late David Prowse, with Jones lending his deep and now instantly recognizable voice. James Earl Jones might have a problem with ethnicities due to the fact that he was raised by the most racist person he has ever known, his grandmother. During an interview with BBC News, the actor and famous voice of Darth Vader shared information about growing up in rural Mississippi with his grandmother, whom he said was profoundly racist, despite her Cherokee, Choctaw Indian, and African-American roots. She was the most racist person, bigoted person I've ever known, Jones told BBC's Stephen Sacker. She trained us that way. She would consider it defensive racism, but it's still racism. It's still the same poison. Jones said he credits his grandmother with giving him his first need for independent thinking after he moved from Mississippi to Michigan, and giving him the ability to empathize with racists. I'd go to school with white kids and Indian kids. I knew they weren't the devils that she said they were. I had to start thinking for myself. In 2022, the Schubert Organization announced that the 110-year-old Court Theater in New York City would be renamed after Jones in celebration of his contributions to Broadway and the entertainment community. Concerning his controversial speech on black people, a fan said, "This is very sad to hear him speak about black women like this, but it makes more sense why he isn't celebrated as much in our community. I always thought he was an exceptional actor." What do you think of James Earl after watching this video? Tell us in the comments section. That's all for today. See you in the next one.